everyone. No, it's still morning. It's 11:30, 11:32, I think it is. So thank you very much for joining our membership and community meeting. And we are glad you're here. Today, our Political Action Committee is going to provide a full update on all we're doing. First, I would like to just introduce myself as the president of the Maricopa County Branch. I'm Karen Hardin, for those of you that may not know. Also, just a quick reminder that we do have our Freedom Fund dinner, and it's called and our community awards program. It will be virtual again this year, and the $75 donation entitles you to a $30 annual membership, as well as a $25 sort of dinner certificate. So we would like for everyone to join us for that night of education and enjoyment. And I will turn the program over to Dr. Westenberg, who is our second vice president, as well as the Political Action Committee chair. And once again, thank you for sharing your time with us today. And we know this will be an informative update. We're providing you with updates. And also, let me ask you to make sure that you are watching your emails, because the branch sends out weekly updates from our email called Maricopa County Branch NAACP@gmail.com. If you're not getting those weekly updates, they usually come out on Sunday. If you're not receiving them, please check your spam mail. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Westenberg, chair of the Political Action Committee. And thank you very much for the presentation today.
Thank you, Dr. Hardin. Today, we are going to provide a legislative update. There will be 3 components to the presentation. The first one will be focused on what I'm calling the many faces of voter suppression, and it has been provided to us by one of our political action members, Dr. Judy Green. And so I will go through very quickly the faces and the ways in which voter suppression can occur, after which Patrick Brown, a Political Action Committee, will update you on the specifics as it relates to what's happening here in Arizona. And then the third component will be Jacob Rayford, who is another member also of the Political Action Committee, who is very involved and will take it to the streets and let you know what things he has been engaging in. And so let's begin. As it relates to voter suppression, there have been laws passed in 2021. 19 states have passed 34 laws. 440 bills have been introduced in 49 states. And 1/3 of all restrictive voting laws were enacted in 2021. And so that means that there is a concerted effort to change the demographics of what's happening at the polls. As it relates to new voter suppression laws affecting the Western area, there has been an effort to eliminate or limit sending mail ballot applications of ballots to voters who do not specifically request them. That means that our public is going to have to be very savvy and engaged about knowing what's going to go, what is going on. They're going to have to take it into their own hands to make sure that they are part of the game. And the methodology has been interested in restricting the assistance in returning a voter's mail-in ballot. So it's very difficult to get assistance with mailing in ballots. And so that's another way in which the public is going to have to be extremely savvy. Another is that there are limited availability of mail drop boxes, as well as imposing stricter signature requirements for mail ballots, to have to be very precise about how you are signing your name, and also to make voter registration more difficult, the times when it can be done and where it can be done. Another face of voter suppression is there are harsh voter ID requirements. College students oftentimes cannot use their college ID to vote. However, you can use a gun license to vote. There is the expansion of voter purges or risk faulty voter purges, and the increase barriers for voters with disabilities, where they can go to vote, the hours that they can get or be available to vote, are barriers that are being placed for individuals to vote. Limiting early voting days and hours. People are working. So you may not be able to vote on a Saturday or a Sunday, or you're working past 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So those are ways in which limitations have been impacted. An increase in the number of voters per precinct. By changing the precincts and looking at the filibustering that has taken place, you're going to have more people standing in line to possibly vote, which again goes back to their jobs and their employment, and they may not have that amount of time to do it. So all of those, reducing the polling places, increasing the number of voters per precinct, and limiting the hours means that a citizen is less likely to go to the poll to vote because it is going to be inconvenient. Proposed suppression bills for 2022 shorten the window to apply for a mail-in ballot. And of course, we know that your name may be taken off of the mail-in ballot list. And so you need to look very closely and make sure that you are in good standing. Shortening the deadline for delivering mail ballots and expanding voter ID requirements are other ways of suppressing the vote. Criminal penalties for helping voters with disabilities. Imagine how many of us will go to our churches, not just those individuals with disabilities, to help them with relatives, senior citizens, to say that you will help them with the voting process. And the idea that there may be a criminal penalty for assisting someone will mean that, in fact, fewer people will be out there even helping others. So those are proposed ways for impacting the voting and having our citizens to have access. Restricting ability to get assistance, returning ballots by mail. I know in the last election, people were harvesting, which is against the law, I suppose, to take ballots to the polls and put them in drop boxes. But there is the possibility that you could get into trouble or into difficulty with the law for doing that. And also prohibit sending out unsolicited mail ballot applications. So just the notion of encouraging our citizens to participate in the process could result in a criminal act on your part. Proposed suppression bills in 2022 to expand opportunities for voter purges, eliminating COVID-19 as an excuse to vote absentee, proof of citizenship to register to vote, and decreased time frame to request a mail ballot. The worst case scenarios are there are no same-day registration opportunities. There is no excuse to vote by mail, not even for COVID-19. There is no absentee voting. You cannot use college ID to vote or to request a ballot, there is no federal holiday on November 8th, and collecting of ballots for the elderly or the disabled are not approved or a criminal act. And so those are some of the faces. Those are some of the things that are being done by a cohort of our citizenship that is trying to suppress the vote, to keep us from having the opportunity to have a voice in this democracy. And it goes on and on and on. And so with that being said, Patrick is going to share with you some of the things that are happening specifically here in the state of Arizona.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick Brown, a member of the executive committee. I'm going to talk about, Dr. Westenberg talked about the, what we're looking at as a country when it comes to voter suppression. I'm going to drill it down to what's going on within our state. I'm going to go through the active legislation, talk about kind of where it is in the process. I'm also going to talk about some things that, everybody on this call can do to address this. Now, I'm going to make my first ask right here. The information that we're providing today, don't sit on it. Don't, take it and kind of go, okay, well, what can I do? Talk to folks that you know, elevate this information, let people understand what's going on. Because here's the thing, voter suppression, and I'm gonna keep it 100, is a partisan issue. But the thing is, the ability to vote, the access to vote should not be partisan. It should be something that whatever your political leanings or ideologies are, you should have the right and access to the ballot, especially in a modern society such as ours. And some of the legislation I'm going to go through this afternoon or this morning is going to touch upon how our ability to vote is going to be restricted. And it's going to be harder to vote depending on, anything from your abilities to, where you live to so many other factors. Before I get started, I want to give you a little bit of background on this current legislative session. There are about 100 bills that were introduced in this session that focused on either limiting, suppressing, or making voting harder. So I'm not going to go through all 100 because we could be here for a while if I went through all 100. I'm going to go through some of the ones that made it through to either being considered by the state legislature. There's a few that are going to the governor's desk, for his signature. And we're going to talk about what we can do even in that regard. One thing that's in common with all of these bills, and the thing is, as Dr. Westenberg said, these bills, this is something that's going on nationwide. This is a concerted effort to restrict voting rights, to limit the size of the electorate so only a few people can vote. Thus, a few people get to have a say in how our government operates. But one thing all of these bills have in common is they come back to what's called the big lie. If you're not familiar with the big lie, that is something that the previous president used as a reason for his defeat at the ballot box. These were things such as vote by mail is not secure. In Arizona, we've been using vote by mail since the mid-1990s, and it's worked great. It's something that when you poll folks in Arizona, somewhere around 75 to 80% of people who live in the state across the board love vote by mail. So that was one aspect of the big lie. Of course, the second part of the big lie is the 2020 election was stolen, meaning that there was some sort of malfeasance or something happening, that ballots were changed or taken away or votes were done weird or whatnot. One thing, the Arizona State Senate audit was fueled by that, where a company by the name of Cyber Ninjas was brought in to audit the ballots. Keep in mind, this company had no experience in this, has never done something like this, violated countless policy, state laws, and federal laws when it comes to this type of work, and understand that in Maricopa County, where we live, we held probably what is one of the most secure elections in the country. And Maricopa County's recorder's office has been awarded, even before the 2020 election, national awards for the efficiency and how well our system works within the county. So again, this all goes back to the big lie. Now, while the NAACP, we are a nonpartisan organization. I'm not going to, cheerlead for one party over the other or anything like that. But I am going, I'm going to be factual in the information and what is going on. So all the voter suppression bills that were introduced in this last session were introduced by Republican legislators. That's the fact. That's what happened. I want you to understand what the breakdown is and just kind of the partisan lean of our legislature. So the reason I'm going to give you that information is so you have an understanding of just kind of, where things are with the passage of bills. And, it kind of comes down to a numbers game. And I'm going to give you kind of a quick quote from President Barack Obama. He was quoted as saying, elections have consequences. And so voting, not voting, there are consequences to those actions. And of course, this is kind of this type of stuff that's going on in our state kind of goes with that. So our House of Representatives within Arizona has 60 members. That breaks down to 29 Democrats, 31 Republicans. In our Arizona Senate, that's a 20-member House. That's 14 Democrats, 16 Republicans. Now, keep in mind, like I said, these are going to be majority rule bills. So, you get a simple majority. This passes to the next chamber, same thing, then goes to the governor's office. So for the governor to sign. Now, one other thing I want to just throw out here, another statistic just for your knowledge. For African-American voters, in the 2020 election, we voted at a overall percentage of about 77%. Now, African-Americans, roughly, depending on how you want to look at the census, there was an undercount. Officially, we're about 7% of the state. I would argue that because the undercount, we're probably 10% of the state. So at 77% of voter turnout by African-Americans, when you compare it to the other ethnicities that voted in 2020, if you're familiar with, the terminology from boxing, pound for pound, we come out and we vote at a much higher rate than anybody else. So even though we're 10% of the population, of the voting population, the electorate, we show up. So this is an important piece of information to kind of think about as I go through this. Also, if you have any questions or anything, drop in the chat. I'll kind of pause as I go through this information to check for any questions or anything. So if you have any questions, you don't have to wait. Just put it in the chat, and I'll try and answer if I can. So I'm going to break down the category of voter suppression bills into these three categories. The first one are going to be suppressing the vote through vote by mail, or PEVL, the permanent early voting list, or now it's been changed to the active early voting list. I'm also going to talk about in-person voting as well. And then we're also going to talk about the legislation that's attacking voter registration. And again, like I said, there's over 100 bills. So I had to narrow it down to, like I said, either the ones that made it through or are probably the most damaging of the bills out there, because there's a lot of bad. So the first one is a vote by mail legislation. It's HB 2239. It was introduced by Representative Hoffman out of LD 12. What this bill does is it bans ballot drop boxes. So how the legislation is ultimately written is the core of it prohibits the use of unmonitored drop boxes. The thing is, unmonitored is not defined. So what does that mean? That's a great question. It's not explained in the law. Now, here's the thing. One of the aspects of the big lie was that drop boxes were stuffed, meaning that folks, mysterious actors came in and they filled those boxes with votes for other people other than who folks were voting for. And that's why certain folks won and other folks lost. Thing is, there is no evidence of that. The sponsor of this bill, the one who introduces the bill, could not introduce any evidence to support that claim. Here's why this bill is dangerous. Now, for those of us who live in Maricopa County, We live in a major metropolitan, county's fairly metropolitan, meaning that the ballot drop boxes that exist that we can use in upcoming elections, they're either part of the county elections building, they're within, some sort of county building, or they're in a situation where they can be monitored by cameras or guard or stuff like that. So within Maricopa County, the unmonitored thing is probably not that big of a deal. However, Arizona is not all the same. There are rural areas where setting up cameras or having a security guard is not workable. So in our rural counties and our rural areas, this will be a problem. This will mean that folks will either have a very limited window or will be unable to utilize these drop boxes to drop off their mail-in ballot. This is especially going to be a heinous attack against folks who live in our Native American tribes and populations, because in those areas, they could live 90 or more miles away from a particular office where they can drop off their ballot. So currently there are ballot drop boxes in areas on the reservations in those communities where people can say drive down the street, drop off their ballot, go about their business. So if this were to pass, it would mean that either they'd have to figure out a way to monitor those things, to whatever monitoring means. If they can't, those boxes have to go away, meaning an individual could have to travel potentially 90 or more miles to be able to vote. That is voter suppression. This next one, we're going to talk about in-person voting. This is Bill HB 2602. This was introduced by Representative Ballot from LD20. This bans vote centers. Now, in Maricopa County, and we have these things called vote centers. It's actually something that worked so well that Pima County is using them, and it's starting to kind of spread around the state. For those of you who've been voting for a while, you remember your voting precinct, and it used to mean that when you cast your ballot, you had to do that within the precinct you live. So that's like neighborhood that you lived in. You have to go to a place to vote. You couldn't vote, say, at a location down the street from your work or somewhere else, because it had to be within that precinct. That's something that has gone away in Maricopa County. So we have these things called vote centers, meaning that you can vote in person or drop off your mail-in ballot anywhere in the county. So if you work in Scottsdale, but your precinct's in South Phoenix, you can drop your ballot off or vote in Scottsdale. You don't have to do all that. And the whole purpose of it was to allow people greater flexibility with their time and access in order to vote. This bill would actually prohibit county recorders from establishing emergency vote centers unless there is a genuine emergency such as war, civil unrest, or natural disasters. So the reason that they're attacking the vote centers is really, like I said, comes back to the 2020 election. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, the current county recorder actually expanded the voting centers beyond what they'd already set up, because so many people, were concerned about COVID, things of that nature. They set up additional ones saying, okay, we're just going to expand it because, we want to be able to spread people out, things of that nature. So this bill pretty much attacks that. And when you actually get deeper in the legislation, it really kind of goes after the whole concept, meaning that if vote centers were to exist, they would be fewer in number, which would create longer lines, which statistically, the longer people wait, the less likely they are to vote. Again, like I said, voter suppression. All right, another fun one. This is going to go after pretty much voting in general. I put it under in-person voting, but this is really across the board, is SB 1338. This was introduced by Representative Rogers from LD6, and this goes back to a hand count of votes. So this will require that all votes to be hand counted, eliminating vote centers and returns to precinct-only voting. So what this does is that no more machines counting votes. What will happen is those votes have to be hand counted, meaning human beings will sit there with a tally sheet counting those votes. This gets rid of the whole vote center thing entirely. Vote centers would be abolished. And then, like I said, along those lines, you have to vote in your precinct. Here's why this is a problem. First of all, we're just using Maricopa County, just Maricopa County, not getting into the whole state. We're the 4th largest county in the nation. We are larger than about 8 US states. This is 2022. Hand counting vote with numbers like that, it's slow, it's inaccurate, and frankly, it's just not something that any modern state should do. The whole purpose is that it creates a situation where, you're going to have mistakes made, you're going to have, a lot of stuff just go sideways. Ultimately, it undermines the whole validity of elections. It's a problem, and again, like I said, this is bad legislation. To add to the previous legislation, we have HB 2298. This was introduced by Representative Fillmore, LD 16, and this, of course, limits voting on election day. This bill actually was killed earlier in the session. It didn't make it out of committee. However, legislators have the opportunity of doing something called a striker, meaning that if a bill doesn't make it out of committee or fails a vote, they can reintroduce it as part of some other piece of legislation that did make it out. So this is what Representative Fillmore did, is he made it a striker bill. And so this bill is actually technically in the Senate because it got attached to another bill. So what this does is this pretty much limits voting to election day only. So that means no early voting. That's gone. It also doubles down on hand counts of ballots, but it also adds a stipulation that ballots must be counted 24 hours. That has to be done 24 hours after the election ends. Now, y'all do the math. Let's say we have record turnout, 3 million votes come in. That has to be hand counted within 24 hours. Again, it's slow, it's inaccurate, and here's the worst part about it: it doesn't allow for any sort of separate verification. So whatever the count is, then within 24 hours, that's the election. There's no, let's make sure that the count is correct. Let's do some verifications and make sure these ballots are accurate. None of that. It's just we count them and whatever happens, happens. Voter suppression. Again. That brings us to HB 2780. This was introduced by Representative Kavanaugh from Legislative District 23. This one is problematic. It publishes a list of voters. So what this does, it require the county recorders to publish a list of eligible voters on their website 10 days before each primary and general election, and after each election to post the images of ballots and all sortable cast vote record. So basically what it is that everybody who's a registered voter in the county, their name and information would go on a website. After the election, their name and information goes on the website if you voted, and then anybody can go in and look at the ballots. Now, first of all, it's a glorious waste of time. That's unnecessary information. Nobody needs that. Also, there are secure ways to look up who's a voter, that you don't need to do this. Second of all, it sets up our county recorders for potential lawsuits because of privacy violations, because while our information, is public record, so your voter information is public record. I can look up every person on this call if you're a registered voter, find out where you're registered to vote and all that type of information. Now, the thing is, I can do it because outside of this environment, I'm a member, I'm a party official who can do that. The thing is, now this makes it to any random person in the world who can do that, because there's some layers of protection for that information. That completely goes away. Very, very problematic. The whole idea, again, is that it may dissuade people from wanting to register to vote or to vote because maybe they just don't want that information out there. They don't want, their employer or maybe people they deal with to know what political party they're affiliated with or any of that type of stuff. So again, another form of voter suppression. All right, one of my personal favorites, let's get into our voter registration. So HB 2780, Representative Hoffman from LD12 again, he was a busy representative. This limits voter registration. So this actually makes it harder for people to register to vote, because what it does is it bans candidates, political committees, and civic organizations from handing out early ballot request forms. So what does that mean? If I'm a candidate running for office, currently, I could, say, hey, get registered to vote. Here's information to do it. Let's get you registered so you can vote in the election. say a political party can do voter registration. They can hand out information, do that. An organization like the NAACP can currently do that. This law goes in effect. Basically, you can't do that. The only people that would be allowed to do that would be election officials, meaning that, for example, the county recorder's office would be the only people that could do that. That's a difficult lift because, it's a whole lot more organizations out there that could do this work and help people get registered to vote than putting this on a county agency, because frankly, they just don't have the manpower to do that. And that's, of course, the core of this, is that it makes it harder for people to register to vote. That's simply what it does, because all the groups listed, candidates, there are tons of civic organizations that do voter registration. Some that's all they do would then be barred from being able to do that work, meaning that there would be fewer voters being able to vote, which impacts, Black and brown communities primarily, because that's where a lot of those organizations do their work. Okay, we're getting into the home stretch here. Like I said, I'm not doing all 100. I'm just doing all the worst of the worst here. This one's a big one. HB 2492. Again, Representative Hoffman back at it again. Voter registration. This one is in red, and I'll get into why that is. Basically, what this does, and I won't read all that information, but simply put, what it does is that it adds higher level restrictions for what documents you can use to register to vote. Basically requires you that you gotta have a passport, birth certificate, naturalization certificate if that applies, maybe a tribal ID. The law is really kind of gray in that area. On top of proving your residency. Where this is a problem is it creates these restrictions for federal only voters, meaning that if you're voting for any federal offices like president, Congress, any of those federal, Senate, that type of stuff, they're saying that you can't vote by mail for those particular offices. That's a problem. I'll get to why in a second. First of all, actually, I'll get to it now. Saying that you can't vote for president, Senate, or members of Congress by mail violates federal law. So right there, that section of the bill already is a problem. The other thing is it also creates new ways to punish non-citizens who may register to vote. Here's the thing, that's a part of the big lie, that apparently all people who were not citizens of the United States somehow miraculously voted in the 2020 election. That's not been proven. That's part of the big lie, and nobody's doing that. So overall, this bill is bad because, well, it violates federal law. That's the first thing. And the Federal Election Commission is not going to follow this nonsense anyway. So that's the first issue. It creates more barriers for people to vote because now you have to suddenly pull all this information that some people don't necessarily have readily available. It's just, you don't need all this stuff to register to vote. You just don't. And of course, they're going after communities of color, but they're really going after Native communities. The reason they're targeting Native communities is they came out in record numbers in the previous election, and many of these documents they don't necessarily possess. Depending on when an individual was born and the circumstances of their birth on Native American communities, they may not have a conventional birth certificate that many of us have. They may not have a passport or any of that type of stuff. They'll have a tribal ID, but of course, according to this, we're not sure if that would work or not. So like I said, this bill has actually passed out of the Senate and has gone to the governor's office for his signature. He hasn't indicated one way or another what he's going to do, but we're encouraging people to email Governor Ducey's. I have his email address here, so take a picture with your phone or write it down or whatnot, or call his office and ask him or demand him, or however you want to go about it, that he veto this legislation, because this is pure voter suppression in every which way and form. Okay, before I get into what can we do, are there any questions from the group? You can unmute, ask your question. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Does anyone have any questions before we go into kind of the call to action part of this? Okay, so what can we do? Here's the first thing. Contact your legislators. Now, some of these bills are in various stages of where they're at. Contact these folks, let them know that you are a voter in that particular person's district. that you intend to vote, and that you are not for this legislation. If you're thinking, well, I'm not really sure who my legislator is, this website, openstates.org, is awesome. I'm going to get into it in just a second, show you what it looks like in real time. This allows you to do a couple things. It's a very easy website. It lets you find who your legislators are, gives you their contact information, so you have it right in front of you. Also, it allows you to track where how legislations, the process of legislation. So all the information I shared with you, you're able to see where it is in the process. You can go to the state ledge website and look at this stuff, but it's designed in a way for people like me who are just really nerdy and know how to look for it and do this way too often. But for someone who says, like, I only got like a few minutes in my day to keep up with the world, Open States is really good because it kind of gets it down to the core of what's going on. And if you need more information, it shows you how to get there. So I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to contact your legislator. Don't do it on social media. I'm gonna tell you right now, most of them don't pay attention to stuff that's on social media. And when you do get a response, it's usually a volunteer or a staffer. Call their office or email them directly, how you feel, or if you want to write them a letter, just because now it's getting down to it, I'd recommend just call these folks and tell them, that, you don't want this stuff to pass. Again, stay informed. A lot of this stuff, and like I said, we all have lives, we have work, we have a lot of stuff. And like I said, some of this is really heavy information, but it's really important to stay informed. Going back to, I said, what President Obama said, elections have consequences. And what we're seeing is an unfortunate consequence of, people not respecting, democracy and trying to, set things up, to favor one individual over another. And that's not okay. There are a lot of easy ways to do this. Like I said, if you're nerdy like me, I can show you how to really get into the weeds and this stuff. However, if you need to kind of keep up, from a more, kind of 30,000 foot view of what's important, what's not, I definitely recommend that you sign up for the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting newsletter. Our friends, was one of our partners that we work with. They do a really good job of doing a weekly newsletter that breaks this stuff down. We actually link a lot of our information that we put out in the NAACP newsletter to what they're posting. So either if you want to get it directly, you can. Definitely follow our newsletter, because we do the same thing. We narrow it down to the really hot stuff that aligns to the NAACP, but they have even more information about everything, stuff that I even talk about that is important, that goes there. I strongly recommend them. Of course, like I said, Open States, again, is another way to keep track of what's going on. Again, share the word. There's that old adage that folks shouldn't talk about politics. Don't. Now, yeah, you may not want to do this at work. There's certain, environments where you don't want to necessarily have these type of conversations. But the thing is that people need to know, because we don't want folks finding out on election day that they can't vote. They need to know now so they can either do something about it or, inform others. Public pressure still matters, because at the end of the day, people who are in elected office need people to vote for them. And if they're on the wrong side of things, they need to know it. So, have these conversations. There are a lot of people out there that are going to vote in upcoming elections that have no idea this stuff is coming or could potentially come. Another thing that you can do to address this, it's an organization called Arizona for Fair Elections. They're doing a citizens initiative, voter initiative. So, if you guys are following, on a federal level, it's been a lot of work to try and pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Of course, that's been stalled in the Senate, for reasons that I won't get into right now. But the fact of the matter is, it's not quite happening. The Arizona Fair Elections Act takes all the language that's in the John Lewis Act and applies it to Arizona. This is a ballot initiative, meaning that what they're doing is they're collecting signatures so that this law can appear on the ballot, so that the people of Arizona can fundamentally vote this into law, meaning that all the things that are in the John Lewis Voting Rights Act would apply in Arizona. So all the links, I have a lot of links in this. I'm going to drop them all in the chat when I get done, so that, you can have these links to look it up on your own, or do whatnot with it. But this is another one that's important, because if we can get this on the ballot, we can get people to, of course, vote for this in November. We could have protections that would address all this bad legislation. So if this becomes law, all the stuff I just talked about, the legislature couldn't do. You couldn't introduce laws to change, to impact our voting. Now, with the people on this call, I'm not worried about this, but the thing is, we all know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's not registered to vote. Here's the thing. Please, please, please register to vote and be an active voter. In Arizona, it's very, very simple to do it currently. Like I said, we're trying to keep it that way. You can go to a website called Arizona.vote. You can do two things at Arizona.vote. If you you can register yourself to vote. You can do it online, very, very easy. However, going back to what Dr. Westenberg said about, people being pulled off the voter rolls and things like that, you can check your own status. I'm not gonna lie, I check my status probably every other month just to make sure. And I'm a very, very engaged and active voter. So you can go and make sure that, you're registered to vote, everything's accurate and all that. This connects to the Secretary of State's office where, they handle the statewide. If you want to know like what the important dates are for everything from primaries, local elections, stuff like that, then Arizona Clean Elections website has a calendar where you can see all the important dates. If you're going like, oh, is there election coming up? You can see when that date is. You can see when mail-in ballots are supposed to go out, when they're due, all that information. This is good information to have. And again, from a county level, at the county level, there's also a way to check your voter registration status. Beballotready.vote is our county level tool that does the same thing as Arizona.vote, but it's just designed for folks who are residents of Maricopa County, making sure that, of course, you register to vote, you find, where the nearest polling places are, vote centers, all that kind of stuff, really get your information. All right. I know I hit y'all with a lot of information, so I'm going to drop these links in the chat here during the course of this particular meeting. Before I open it up for questions again, I want to reiterate, we cannot be silent on these issues. We need to have these conversations. We need to inform the people within our network what's going on and how they can be engaged in this process. If you're an active social media user, use some time to post this information. Let's use social media for more than, Kanye West and cat videos. Let's talk about, some of these important issues. If you're members of, other organizations, things like that, like I said, it doesn't have to be a partisan conversation. Just, make sure, the people that you're encountering are informed. It could be, hey, y'all register to vote, y'all voting, an upcoming election. You ain't got to talk about who, just making sure they're involved, or letting them know that, hey, were you guys aware that there's a bill, that could make it harder for me to drop off my ballot or drop off the ballot for my elderly parent or my disabled cousin or whatnot? These are all really important things. So with that said, I want to say appreciate the time. Are there any questions that I can answer?
I don't see anything in the
Okay.
chat.
Oh, I see one thing in the chat here.
One.
Okay. It was a thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Always appreciate it. I do want to say one quick thing here. Lots of information I know. This meeting and everything we're presenting will go up on our YouTube page for the branch. So if you're following us on social media or whatnot, I'll put the link. I'll put all the important links in the chat. So if you want to share this with somebody who wasn't able to attend, all this is being recorded. It'll go up on our YouTube page. It'll probably go up on by Sunday. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Westenberg.
Thank you, Patrick, so very much. I think what you said was talk, talk, talk. I agree. People may not know what's going on. I suspect that the larger part of society does not really, they're not aware of all of the nuances that's happening with voter suppression. I do want to be cognizant of time. Jacob is one of our next gen individuals who has been out there on the streets, and he is very involved, and I'd like for him to share a bit of what he has been doing recently. And so he is a diligent member of our Political Action Committee. Jacob, will you please?
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Yeah, my name is Jacob Rayford. Just a little bit of background about me. My tenure in it started back in 2020 during the peaceful protests, the demonstrations surrounding Black lives, and things that are politically centered in 2020. Since then, we've looked at ways to create solutions to the issues that we were bringing up to the general public. And one of the ways that we look to create a solution is through advocating for the creation of a first responder unit centered around an idea that was started in Eugene, Oregon by the name of Cahoots. Our localized version is called NAACP, which stands for the Neighborhood Organized Crisis Assistance Program. This is something that we were looking to create in terms of a resource for behavioral health, substance abuse, calls pertaining to the unsheltered community. And then hopefully as this idea evolves, we'll go on to, deal with victimless nonviolent dispatches. We know that there's language out there, connotations that would make this somewhat of a partisan thing, but this is something that we feel is universally needed in our communities. And over the past year and a half, we've been engaging with members of the municipal structure here in Phoenix, Arizona, from council members all the way over to the city management office itself. And this is something that you may have seen over the news, seen in the news, on your channel 15s and your 10s and things of that nature. And I can give a little bit of information about what we do because I know we're a little short on time. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Brief warning, I'm not as technically gifted as I may look. So here we go. And we're just going to take a look at some of the stats and whatnot, and from graphs that were provided by the city. And let's see, my screen.
Okay.
So here we go. I'm not sure how big this is on your screen. If not, maybe you can screenshot it. But we're just going to look at some of the information here. This is from one of the districts in Phoenix, Arizona. And a lot of this language we've come to find has been mistranslated by dispatch units and whatnot. And this is one of the reasons why we've had a lot of issues pertaining to involvement with the unsheltered community in our current law enforcement agencies. Trespassing, check welfare, suspicious person. These are things that have historically been shown to at times be individuals moving through neighborhoods, making their way somewhere, or seeking respite. Check welfare calls that often does fall into behavioral health dispatches, where someone really is just in a very human or intimate moment and just needs assistance and things of that nature. And let's see, one second, let me do this correctly. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of the advantage points of NAACP here, and while keeping this on screen. Of course, it addresses the need for a new first responder unit specializing in behavioral health, wellness checks, substance abuse, establishing rapport with a growing unhoused demographic. So of course, as I said before, it's a practical, nonpartisan solution to overburden police safety departments whose current workload incorporates multiple branches of civic service. We're talking about putting on different hats and looking at things through scopes of different philosophies, things that people are clinically trained in normally. And we can't expect our current law enforcement agencies to be trained in, or fire departments. So this is a pro-mental well-being initiative for both impacted families as well as public safety officers expected to navigate through myriad dispatches, some potentially traumatic on a daily basis, while still remaining fit for service. To kind of tack on to what I was saying before. We believe that this new first responder department, this is very, very important, should be accessible through 911 in order to provide universal access to human services calls. Like I said, behavioral health, substance abuse, wellness checks. This simple but effective change marks a cultural step forward for all American families of all backgrounds. Now, this is also for those who are really big on numbers and budgets and things of that nature, very fiscally responsible alternative to budget misallocation by divesting and redistributing funds equivalent to the scope of work provided by this new department while maintaining structural integrity of the current first responder resources. And we felt it important to stress this because how a lot of language is not only misinterpreted, but then politically weaponized. It's not really about, it's not about defunding the police. It's about creating a new, filling a gap that has historically been unaddressed. And as we see now in this current state, behavioral health is something that impacts families across the board. So we've created a website for people to show up, join the cause, send a letter to our mayor, add on to the petition. There's so much information about what we've been doing over the past year and a half. And again, this is something that has been modeled after a very successful 30-year-long program called Cahoots. And they've gone on record. You can't hear the audio, so you can just have to go to our website here to check it out. But they've gone on record for the city of Flagstaff and other members in Phoenix and advocacy groups and whatnot, saying that not only is no cap a beautiful solution to these problems, but these the way in which we approach it are some ways in which they believe they should have thought of this, they should have taken when this was first incepted, or their idea was first incepted some 25, 30 years ago. And this is something that we've done a lot of research over. We have gone even to the point of creating a city ordinance that addresses everything in an official manner. And that, of course, is also available on the website. I know this is a lot of information and we're on a very limited time. So if you have any more questions, you can leave your email in the chat box there. Or of course, you can always visit NOCAP, NOCAP, PHX, like the Suns, .com, and you'll be able to get everything you need there. And of course, I'm always open for questions throughout the day, 7 days a week. So thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. He is really out there doing, for one of our next gen young people, that lets you know if all of our young people were doing what Jacob is doing, and Patrick, you're young too, just a slight difference in age. We are really headed in the...
I don't feel young when I wake up in the mornings.
Listen.
I'd like to know, are there any questions that you have regarding the presentations today? Well, I'd like to thank you so very much. I'd like to conclude by saying it all hinges down to empowerment. And the notion of empowerment rests in our hands. It is a matter of how diligent we are about taking control of what's happening to us. And there are many things that are happening to us that are not positive necessarily. And so we just must be engaged. We must empower ourselves to empower others. We must be active. And it is through that we will save our democracy. It is certainly, I think we're at a time where it's a crucial time, where we have a cohort of individuals who are really trying to sabotage the democracy that we have. And there's a lot of work to be done. And the only way to do it is just to take it and begin to empower ourselves. And if we empower ourselves, then we can go about the business of empowering others and saving this freedom, this democracy that our ancestors have fought so very hard for us to have, and that we are treasuring and enjoying today. With that being said, I thank you so very much. If there are no questions or comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can this presentation be sent to our listserv? Or is that something that we don't do?
Yeah, Juanita, it will be on the newsletter that goes out on Sunday. Just once we get done on the uploaded to YouTube, and it'll be a link in that
Okay.
in the newsletter. So it'll be available to whoever, to the whole world.
Yeah, because that's kind of the problem. We kind of know what's going on, but it's, as you said earlier, it's so many people that do not.
They don't.
And I don't know, it just appears that we just can't get anybody interested to I guess kind of see what's going on. So
A
when you
lot of
think
that,
about
a lot of that comes down to, it's a lot of it is personal relationships, because if I'm a stranger to you and I'm trying to hit you with all this information, you probably not going to really necessarily always resonate. Some people will, but a lot of folks will kind of go, I don't really know who you are and whatnot. And so I think a lot of the value is, having those conversations with people that we have relationships with. Yeah, they may not resonate with everything that we talked about today, but even if it's just like one or two items or issues, and they do one or two things, that can be a big deal. The other part is really just elevating this information. I mean, everybody on this call, whether you're a YouTube type person or not, please, if you use social media, this is the stuff I would say people should post about, and talk about, within their own personal communities to elevate these things.
It's true. It's very true. And I think if each of us but of course we're preaching to the choir here. We're preaching to the choir, but I do think that there are certain, maybe we need to pick and choose certain components of it and go into some places where I think we have to get out of where we are and to go into places to share information with individuals so that they are not going to come to us. We have to go to them. And so, we're here in our meeting today, but then maybe we need to be out somewhere within the community as well, sharing information, find some other ways. And maybe we don't need to give them such a heavy dose as we're giving them here, but give them that part that is significant to them. And for senior citizens, maybe we need to go into a senior citizen's home. Maybe we need to find those environments and go and begin to share information. But it comes down to strategy. We've got to strategize is what it comes down to. Yeah.
And I would say we've also got to start being proactive with these issues, because looking at the folks who are pushing this, voter suppression stuff, they started planning even before the last election on how they were going to, do what they did. And so, it's been a lot of reaction on many of our parts of like trying to, let people know what's going on, reacting. All this legislation didn't just magically happen. This was very coordinated, really years in advance to get to this moment. So we have to start being proactive. We have to start talking about voting and elections and what's going on well before November or well before August. Really, we should be talking, like, for example, we should be talking about what are we going to do for the next election even before this one drops.
I agree with you totally.
I agree.
And I kind of think I hear what you're saying too, but I think once Stacey Abrams did what she did, that is where it all truly started. It's like, no more, this won't happen again. So I kind of think that's where it all originated from, because once she got out there and did what she did, yeah, it changed everything. So
yes, yeah. I think you're right, Dr. Westenberg. We need to get out. I'm thinking about when we were forming groups and so forth for the election for President Obama. I was in Pasadena at the time, very active. We went to the missions. We went to the homeless people, told them that they could vote. All they had to do was give an address at one of the missions. They didn't even know they were eligible to vote. See, that's the other point. Some homeless people don't think they can vote. And we went to the big missions downtown LA and got those people voted. We just need to, this has to be on foot, yeah.
That being said, I'm doing double duty here. I think,
Yes.
I'm sorry. She's fine. With the Political Action Committee, one of the things that we're going to need to do is really strategize. And that's where we're going to be, is getting our, I'm sorry, she's going to go down. I didn't know she was going to do that. But at any rate, we're going to fix this world so it will be better for all of the children coming up.
Yes,
And it is
yes.
in our hands right now. As I have said, people paved the pathway for us. And there is a concerted effort to take it back. And so we do have to strategize. A war room is what we need.
Oh,
And
yes.
I think that's where Patrick, with the Political Action Committee, where we're going with our next meeting, is to get a war room together and get ready for midterm elections so that we can combat what we are seeing here with the faces of voter suppression.
Yes, we've come too far. We've come too far.
Yeah.
You know,
I always love the quote that, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams come true. And the thing, and the thing is that the work that we need to do, we have to put it in perspective, is that if we were to go back even 60 years, having the conversation that we're having so publicly could threaten our lives.
Yes,
that's true.
Yes.
I'll and Jacob can confirm this. The work that I do would have got me killed like 60 years ago, easy.
Yeah, easy.
So the thing is that what the perspective we need to have is that we got to, the time that it may take out of other things that are going on is time well served, because at this point a lot of the issue isn't am I putting my life in jeopardy by going out and register folks to vote or sharing this information? Not really, but the thing is that we got to say, all right, you know what, we got to take that time. Maybe I could be watching something on HBO, or I could do something else. So now it's like we just got to say, we just got to be inconvenienced, or we got to say we got to put other stuff to the side, because if we're not doing this work now, then all the work that has gone into getting us to a point where, now we're talking about, hey, don't make it harder to vote. It'll take us all the way back to when, you had to count the beans in a jar, or all that type of stuff to cast your vote.
Yeah. And, I took my grandchildren with me. We went door to door. We even went door to door to make sure people got. See, this is what I'm saying. And Dr. Westenberg, you said it. This is on the ground now. We've got to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And meet people where they are. They're not going to come to us. No, they're not. No.
So you have to.
I mean, you know that, you guys. So anything you need.
I from the Political Action Committee perspective, we understand what our journey is and what we have to do. And we are going to move aggressively in that direction and keep you abreast of where we are going. There are Patrick, Jacob, Dr. Judy Green, they are on the committee. There are some wonderful, wonderful people on the Political Action Committee. They are so very, very knowledgeable.
Yes.
And I appreciate them a great deal. And so you will be hearing from us.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick, Jacob, and all the others. Thank you for you young people taking the baton, and let's keep moving with it. Let's keep passing it, pass it.
That's it. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful remainder of your day.
Thank you.
Have a
Guys,
great
be
weekend,
blessed.
everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.